Welcome to Asian American Life. I'm Ernabelle DeMillo. May is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, so we're paying tribute to trailblazers who have made significant contributions to the Asian American community. One of them is a philanthropist and businessman whose big donation is helping to create the first contemporary School of the Art right here at Queens College. I'll have more on that story coming up, but first, here's a look at what's ahead. Turning green energy into art. Meet Queens artist and sculptor Haksul Lee. Power of the Pen. The Asian American Writers Workshop celebrates 30 years. And Ly Tran's critically acclaimed memoir, House of Sticks. Plus, a special report on the state of public safety for Asian American women and what you can do to protect yourself. This and more on Asian American Life. Thomas Chen moved to Queens from Taiwan with little money and a dream. This is where he raised his family, and this is where he built his empire. And now he's giving back.
When you look to the left, it gives you a big overview of the size of the factory.
It's a sight to see. The Queens headquarters of Crystal Window and Door Systems takes up an entire city block in Flushing, Queens.
We manufacture windows and doors. We have over 5 factories throughout the country: New York, Pennsylvania, Chicago, St. Louis, and right outside of Los Angeles. A little bit over 750 employees.
It's hard to imagine that this multi-million-dollar company, founded by Thomas Chen in 1990, started in the family's garage.
He would be the contractor that welded all these bars outside people's windows. And enough people asked him, do you replace windows? He started replacing windows. And we used to have to drive from Queens all the way out to Brooklyn to pick up these windows. And just one day he opened our garage and just said, hey, these windows don't look too hard to make. I could figure this out myself. And started from there, from the garage, pretty much.
Chen, who is still chairman of the company he built, has handed over the reins to his eldest son, Steve, now CEO. We met with Steve and his younger brother, Johnson.
I also remember having fond memories of walking and running around the factory and causing a ruckus while my dad was still he was just trying to get his work done.
Their father emigrated to New York from rural Taiwan in 1982. Like many immigrants, he arrived with little money and spoke little English. But he had big dreams. His sons say the New York skyline was a beacon for their dad and a city where he could start a new life. Today, he makes the windows you'll see in many skyscrapers and buildings. You can say Thomas Chen is now part of the skyline. In 2021, the company was named to Crain's New York list of the top privately held companies in New York.
Well, you get to see how windows are being glazed.
Crystal Windows is also one of the few manufacturers still making products in Queens, the family's longtime home.
Queens has always been our home. We've immigrated in Queens. We started up in Queens. We've lived all throughout Queens, from the south side to here in northern Queens, from Rockaways to Ozone Park to Jamaica to northern Queens, here we're at now. Our employees are from Queens. It matters a lot.
Queens is a big hub for immigrants just coming in. And we like to be some type of almost like a beacon for first generation immigrants coming to America.
Chen is also a philanthropist. His passion is the arts, supporting Asian American artists and local art projects. In 2020, his donation to the Queens Museum helped to replace the walkway of the panorama of the city of New York. Most recently, the Chens made headlines for their $1.1 million gift to Queens College.
Thomas Chen is not one of our graduates, but that makes this gift even more special because he's just like our graduates. What I mean by that is he's someone who came here to pursue the American dream. He came with nothing. He's a self-made man. That's the story of our students. It's the story of their parents. It's the story of this institution.
The money will help kickstart Queens College's new School of the Arts, one of the many projects President Frank Wu has implemented at the school since his appointment in 2020. Chen's gift will focus on contemporary Asian art.
This is a transformative gift to support Asian art. That's something that is so important to our students and their families, to see their culture, their heritage represented and promoted. You're not going to find very many endowments supporting Asian art anywhere.
For Thomas Chen, an immigrant success story, his legacy is crystal clear.
My father, he want people to know that there is no ceiling in terms of what you can accomplish with hard work, dedication, work ethic. As you rise, you need to bring the community and the people who have uplifted you with you.
In Flushing, Queens, I'm Ernabelle DeMillo for Asian American Life.
I'm Kyung Yoon. There's been a surge in violence against Asian Americans, and women are disproportionately targeted, with 62% of all incidents being reported by women. That's according to the National Asian Pacific Women's Forum that recently released a report on the safety concerns of Asian American women in the United States.
Like many New Yorkers, Maria Yip Lord has returned to commuting by subway, something she did for years before the pandemic. But now, she says, things feel different.
I think as New Yorkers, we all feel vulnerable taking the subway, but as an Asian American woman, I certainly do feel unsafe. I've changed my behavior where the simple liberties of being able to read on the subway or take a nap are now removed. I carry a whistle with me on my keychain. I have my iPhone with me at all times, and I'm alert and surveying my surroundings.
The horrific murder of Michelle Go, who was pushed to her death in the Times Square station. Christina Yuna Lee, who was followed by a stranger and stabbed to death in her apartment in Lower Manhattan. And scores of other crimes targeting Asians, all happening before the one-year anniversary of the shootings in Atlanta spas that left 8 people dead, including 6 Asian women, have many women like Maria on edge.
So some of the assaults that you were reading about against Asian American women were only 2 or 3 blocks away from my office, and I start to question, could I be next? How safe am I?
Maria is not alone in her anxiety. A recently released national survey of Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander women found that between March 2021 and March 2022, nearly 3 in 4 Asian American women reported experiencing racism and/or discrimination, and more than half reported a stranger or someone they didn't know as the perpetrator. Nearly 40% of the women surveyed reported experiencing sexual harassment during the past year. More than half of East Asian American women responding said they felt less safe today than at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. And 71% of respondents reported living with anxiety and stress because of fear of discrimination, harassment, or violence.
These are just unbelievable statistics, and to me, while the stories that have come to the spotlight in the news have been important to listen to, what it doesn't show is how so many of us are experiencing harassment and discrimination on a regular basis that doesn't rise to the level of national news story coverage. We're being targeted specifically because we are Asian American women, and the stereotypes that come with that, right? That we're docile, that we're submissive, the stereotypes around fetishization, hypersexualization of Asian American women. I mean, all of that plays a role in our vulnerability in this society.
I think what the pandemic has shown us is that stripped away from everything else, just the fact that we look Asian is enough to be attacked. It doesn't matter that I'm a law firm partner.
Attorney Jennifer Wu is a partner at the law firm Paul Weiss, who's representing victims of anti-Asian violence, including the families of Michelle Go and Christina Yuna Lee.
I think the work that I've done with the victims of anti-Asian violence, unprovoked violence, has shown that people are scared of coming forward. I think that's a very, very important aspect. And I think the fact that you don't see a lot of these victims out in the media goes to show that they think that coming out in the media and speaking about these issues means that they're going to be trolled or attacked further. That's a real fear in the community.
For women like Maria, the fear is becoming the next target, and she's taking steps to prevent that from happening.
So as I started to commute more frequently by subway and the headline news of an uptick in violence against Asian American women, those two problems really had my girlfriend and I considering self-defense class. So we enrolled in Krav Maga in Brooklyn, and every week we're learning practical skills on how to defend ourselves, whether it's being thrown to the ground and how to kick our way out of being on the ground. And our instructor would teach us some practical skills. What it did do was help empower us so that we didn't feel so vulnerable, that we were prepared and ready, and we could surprise our attacker.
The Napoff report calls on elected officials to do a better job of understanding the unique experiences and needs of Asian American women, and to commit more linguistically accessible resources to support their financial and mental health and safety. I'm Kyung Yoon for Asian American Life.
For more than 30 years, the Asian American Writers Workshop has lifted the voices of Asian American writers, including some of today's most prominent thinkers. I got a chance to speak with two of its co-founders to mark the organization's milestone.
Money. 1.2 million.
Crazy Rich Asians, To All the Boys I've Loved, and Pachinko, a new series on Apple TV, are all adapted from books by Asian American writers. And at the forefront of elevating the voices of AAPI writers is the Asian American Writers Workshop, now celebrating its 30th year.
Oh my God, this is a very, very sacred space for me. It brings me back to how we started 30 years ago.
Bino Realuyo, then a recent immigrant from the Philippines, was one of the original founders. Their idea was simple, he says: establish a space where Asian American writers can thrive.
We are all writing and giving each other workshop, but being able to give feedback on somebody else's work from a perspective of a shared experience was for them revolutionary.
Literature is really one of the few ways, I believe, that we can create empathy, that we can kind of transcend borders with people. We were all talking about how we had all wanted to be writers, and it was kind of a shameful secret for most of us because our parents didn't approve.
The Asian American Writers Workshop became a nonprofit in 1992 with Curtis Chen as the first executive director. Its first cohort of workshop writers would become some of the country's celebrated Asian American writers like Kathy Park Hong, Changra Lee, and Tina Chang. The group worked out of the offices of the Committee for Anti-Asian Violence until 1995, when they opened a reading room and bookstore on St. Mark's Place in New York's East Village.
I think most Asian American writers now have been touched by the Writers' Workshop, and in some way, they may have taken a writing workshop, they may have attended the open mics, they may have been published in one of the journals.
Nancy Bulalaka was the organization's first program director who launched a reading series that continues to this day, fostering a new generation of writers.
Our sanctuary space is really driven by an ethos of radical inclusivity.
Jafreen Udine is the current executive director, seen here speaking with author R.O. Kwan.
We are the Asian American Writers Workshop, but our events feature Latinx writers, feature Black writers, feature queer writers. Our tent is a big one, and that's intentional.
Our Asian American stories are very important now because of the climate that we're living through. We're living in a time where most of us feel really scared about just being on the street or taking the subway. And there's been this atmosphere that's been cultivated against us in a way that really, has to do with a lack of education and a lack of recognizing Asian American Pacific Islanders as American.
It's been my observation that when you read at the Asian American Writers Workshop, everyone's shoes are really cool. For example.
While more Asian American authors have been published since the organization's founding, Nancy says there's more work to be done. Asian American writers are still on the margins. Just 11% of the books published in 2018 were written by people of color. Overall, 76% of the publishing industry is white, according to this survey by Lee and Low.
It's awesome that there are hundreds of books around us, that there are thousands of books out there, and that AAPI stories are being told. But there's sort of that added step that needs to happen where, these stories are accessible to people who are not AAPI.
The Evening Hero author takes stock in creating a sanctuary for generations of Asian American writers who have made a pilgrimage to the workshop in search of their voice.
And a lot of people don't even know what they need until they come here. I've seen people crying because they haven't been in a space like this that has felt so safe, and really just feeling like, like our voices matter. And it does. And I think that is one of the proudest things for me, is that we have created this space where people can feel safe.
For Asian American Life, I'm Rainer Ramirez.
An award-winning memoir chronicles a family's journey from Vietnam to right here in Queens. Caroline Erdell sat down with the author Ly Tran to talk about her family's powerful story.
Ly, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here.
I appreciate that. So your memoir is House of Sticks, and I just first have to say that I loved it. I found it incredibly moving. The memoir tells the story of you and your family coming to New York City from Vietnam. You were just a little girl. So can we start there? Tell us a little bit about those early years here in New York.
Absolutely. Well, first, we came here through something known as the Humanitarian Operation, which is a government program that was designed to resettle former prisoners of war here in the States. And my father served about a 10-year sentence in the re-education camps of Vietnam. He was a lieutenant in the we call it the American War, but here it's the Vietnam War. And so, our family was persecuted even after he was released from prison. So we just had to find ways to come over just to leave Vietnam somehow. And we tried to actually escape by boat a few times, and that didn't work out. So when we heard about this humanitarian operation program, my father applied, and a few months later, we, were on a plane to New York City.
Which I'm sure felt like such a great relief at that time, and yet when you actually got here, it wasn't all that easy.
Right. Coming from Vietnam, coming from this really warm climate to America, especially in the dead of winter, I think it was January when we came, was very difficult for us. And then it was this really small, cramped apartment, basically 2 bedrooms, but 2 small rooms for a family of 6. And the heater, didn't work most of the time. And so we were freezing, and we had to really, try to make ends meet and pinch pennies wherever we could. For starters, we owed the government for the plane tickets to come over here to New York City. So, we were already in debt. And so we had to find a way to make ends meet. So my parents found this job doing basically sweatshop labor. And we were supposed to make ties and cummerbunds and flight attendant scarves, just piecemeal in the middle of our living room for very little money. I think it was something like 24 ties would earn us $1. And I was 3 years old at the time, and that was my first job in America.
You couldn't see very well
Yes.
as a kid. You desperately needed glasses. Your school identified the problem, talked to your parents. Your father refused.
Yes. Again, a symptom of PTSD, which he no doubt experiences, is paranoia. And he thought that glasses were a government conspiracy to take away my eyesight. Now, I was 8 when the nurse sent me home from school with a note asking my parents to get me glasses, and he just flat out refused, and he thought that I was really going to go blind from glasses.
And this went on for years.
Yes, so I could not see the board from the age of 8 all the way to college.
And yet at the end of the book, it's your father who suggests that you have LASIK surgery. I have to just tell you that I was crying like a baby at that point because, I don't know, for lack of a better way to describe it, it felt so full circle.
Yes.
And it was so surprising to me in a way, too.
Right. Yeah, it was surprising to me as well, and it just goes to show you how complex we are as human beings. And my father is someone who is very complex and someone who deeply cared about me and loved me. You know, even not allowing me to see glasses wasn't out of malice, but out of love. He wanted to protect me from the government that he was trying to escape from.
How did your family react to the memoir?
You know, they reacted in such a gracious and wonderful way. They were so supportive. When it came out, of course. When I was first telling them that I was working on a memoir and I was a writer, you know, my parents were saying, okay, you know, are you going to get a real job at some point?
Yeah.
And so I just remember the first time seeing them hold my book in their hands. It was such a magical moment, so beautiful, and they cried.
But there are aspects of the book that they might have felt were not things that they wanted publicly discussed, I imagine, or was that not the case?
Well, you know, when I first embarked on this project, I told them I'm writing this memoir. It's about my life, which inevitably includes you and your lives, and I'm going to paint us all in the most humanistic way possible. You know, I'm just going to celebrate our humanity in all of its complexity. And that also means talking about the dark moments. And, you know, sometimes and myself included, I don't paint myself in the best light always. Mm-hmm. And they said to me, Lee, you do what you need to do.
How do you feel now looking back on where you were and what you've accomplished?
Oh gosh, I mean, I feel so many emotions, you know, just thinking back on, you know, the little 3-year-old who was just cutting, you know, fabrics with my family in 1993, and then not being able to see all of these things, this entire life trajectory that I've been on, to now being able to say that I am an author. It's such an incredible experience to be able to step into my power and my identity.
And just a final thought, Lee, what do you hope readers take away from the book?
I hope that readers take away hope, I guess, and compassion for others. I think all of us are struggling with our own demons, and that's something that I really had to understand about my parents and my brothers and everybody in my life, to really come to this place of equanimity and of forgiveness, both for myself and for others.
Lee, thank you so much for all this time. I loved chatting with you, and I really so enjoyed the book.
Thank you so much. It's been so delightful talking to you today, and such an honor to be here.
Thanks.
He creates art that focuses on important themes like environmental conservation and diversity. His name is Hoxal Lee, and his sculptures are popping up all over the city.
Movement and meaning are a trademark of artist Hoxal Lee.
If you have 4D object, which is a kinetic sculpture, and it's moving, and movement and time is the same thing in physics. So when you're having 4D object, it really come most closely to the viewer and their life.
Part engineer and part artist, Lee is looking to create a connection between his art and audience through his kinetic sculptures. A recipient of the Art in the Parks grant, Lee's most recent work, The Giving Tree, is on display in Flushing Meadows Corona Park. Made mostly from recycled materials, Lee's sculpture literally brings power to the community. Using natural energy from wind turbine to generate electricity, the sculpture powers a phone charging station and acts as a street lamp at night. By having his Giving Tree give, Lee hopes to foster an appreciation for nature and green energy.
All those people who, you know, charge their phone freely and knowing that it's from nature, I wanted to put some seeds in their mind.
Originally from South Korea, Lee came to the U.S. to study art history at Queens College and stayed because of the rich diversity he found.
United States of America, we all came from somewhere. So nobody is like a truly, you know, insider, everybody's outsider.
And Lee says there's a beauty to that notion which he focuses on in his work. Addressing culture and diversity, Lee collaborated on the What Is Your Name installation at LaGuardia Airport, where he interviewed hundreds of travelers.
Greeting them and then meeting them by exchanging each other's name in writing and then put that whole thing into the sculpture.
Lee's moving metal sculptures are a sight to behold, from small, curious creations to big, bold pieces powered by green energy, all of them infused with a message.
I think artist in general is a cultural politician. So politicians represent people. Artists represent the cultural desire of people. And I think my role as an artist is just keep engaging.
Which Lee does not only through his art, but also by teaching at the Art Students League of New York.
I learn more by teaching than any other activity.
Lee's Giving Tree will be at Flushing Meadows Corona Park through November. For Asian American Life, I'm Susan Jun.
That's our show for now. If you want to learn more about these stories, be sure to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Asian American Life. I'm Ernabelle DeMillo. We'll see you next time.